this March meeting with the roll call, if Darla is ready.
Okay. Ballard. Burrell.
Here.
She's here. Seaboard, sorry. Cockrum.
Here.
Kinsey.
Here.
St. John. Here. Herrera, Smith, and Whistler are all absent.
Okay, well, that gives us a quorum, so we can officially call this meeting to order. And today's agenda is a variety of things. We've got a full agenda of minutes approval, reports, resolutions, and communications to approve, petitions continued, several petitions continued till April, and then we have an item on the consent agenda, and then 2 petitions that are substantive in nature, and then a bunch of amendments to the UDO. So this will be a good flavor of meetings here, lots of different items. I think that we will begin with minutes. If we're ready to approve minutes, we have 2 minutes to approve, one from December, and then February. We did not hold a January meeting, so there's no minutes from that to clear up. Anyone want a motion for minutes approval?
Motion approval for, can we do them both at the same time, or you want them separately?
Probably should do them separate, yeah.
Motion for approval of the December minutes, please.
I'll second.
Excellent, okay, Flavia, second, I heard. We'll make sure that the Zoom people get to participate equally in this. So Flavia has seconded for December minutes.
Michael Rooker, City Attorney, just going to interrupt. I think, Jackie, can you correct me if I'm wrong? An updated version of these minutes was sent
Today.
today, so I just want to be clear. It's the updated version
Yep.
that you're moving approval of?
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Mike, for that clarification. Yep, so I presume that's what we're approving is the December updated minutes that were sent today.
Yes, that's accurate. It was just a date update that was inaccurate. Thanks.
Great. All right, okay, so if we're ready, we'll call a vote on that.
St. John.
Yes.
I guess we could do
Kinsey.
Yes.
Seaboard.
Yes.
Cockrum.
Yes.
Burrell.
Yes.
And Ballard.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I think because we are hybrid, we do have to vote on all of these. We can't just do all in favor. Is that correct, Jackie?
We have to do voice vote for every
Voice vote, okay, good. All right, I just want to make sure. All right, so February 7th meeting minutes. Motion and a second? Good.
I move to approve the February 7th minutes.
Thanks. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right. We can call roll on this one, too.
Burrell.
Yes.
Cockrum.
Yes.
St. John.
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
And then Ballard.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, Seaboard, I'm sorry. Yes.
All right. Okay, and I noticed in the February minutes, though, I had one question. We had one appointment to the MPO that was still in question, and it said that we were going to discuss this at the next meeting. I don't know if that's been resolved, or?
I don't believe it's been resolved. I think we'll wait and discuss it hopefully when we have a full group next month.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right, hold till April. Okay, and now it looks like we have some reports and resolutions, well, at least some resolutions to address. And I'm guessing that these also need to be approved and voice vote, both of these?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm not positive about the fee schedule. Mike can weigh in on that, but definitely the resolution.
If you're doing a hybrid meeting, all of your votes, even on something that
Everything.
may seem relatively trivial, have to be done via roll call.
okay,
Oh, sorry, I meant that I wasn't sure you had to vote at all, but you do have to vote to change the rules of procedure.
You have to vote on the resolution
Yeah.
itself, yes.
yeah, okay. All right, so do we have staff presenting? Jackie, are you presenting the resolution for zoning commitment?
I can explain it, and then Eric can pop on if I'm leaving anything out here. It's pretty basic. So part of code requires a zoning commitment to be recorded for accessory dwelling units. This particular party recorded the zoning commitment before they finished construction and then decided not to build it. Zoning commitments that we record through planning and transportation are to the plan commission, so they're committing to this body. So in order for them to be rescinded, this body has to vote to do that. So we recommend that you, I don't know if rescind is the right word, Mike, to vote to rescind this zoning commitment. It's not valid or accurate. They did not build the ADU.
Okay,
Yeah, I think rescind is just fine.
okay. All right, so our motion would be to rescind the zoning commitment for this particular, I don't know if we need to specify.
Sure, I can go ahead and say,
3121
yeah. The zoning commitment for 3121 East Taps Turn for an accessory dwelling unit that ended up not being built.
Okay. I'll motion to rescind the zoning commitment for 3121 East Taps Turn Road.
Second?
Was that Commissioner Cockrum who weighed in?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, okay. I'm going to try and be really conscious of the remote participants to allow them to participate as well. All right, so it looks like we have a motion and a second, so we're ready to call the roll on this one? Or if there's any other questions, I don't know if there are any questions on this resolution? No, we're okay?
Yes.
Cockrum,
I think I did that.
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
and then Ballard. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we have unanimous approval on this one. All right, now next to the next item is fee schedule changes.
So quickly, we are proposing to update the fee schedule. Let me see if I can pull this up, just a second. The fee schedule was last updated in 2013, and before that, it hadn't been updated since 1997. So it's been updated twice in the last 25 years. We have semi-recently looked up comparable fee schedules for both college towns and other towns in Indiana to try to see kind of where we were falling when we thought about making these changes. So we are proposing a number of changes, some to kind of simplify and clarify our existing schedule is a little confusing sometimes. So to split out, for example, different types of plats, including amendments and vacations that aren't currently enumerated. And then, hold on, I can share that just a second. There we go.
Thank you.
So plats and amendments to plats, clarifying what each of those separately are, raising the fee slightly for primary plats, and also slightly for secondary plats, changing the terminology that was updated with the new code, and then also clarifying separate fees for different types of site plans. We found that these proposals that we've made for the changes are in line with typical fees in other locations. And we do think, more importantly, in line with how much time we spend on these projects. They probably could be more than this, but how much staff time goes into researching and reviewing these projects, especially those plats and site plans that involve other departments, and how much time actually goes into all of this work. So we are proposing to slightly raise some of these fees. We are proposing to keep most of our permit fees the same. Again, they probably could be raised based on how much time staff spends on them. However, especially for permit fees, including like sign permits and temporary use permits, those are usually small small businesses or small members of the community, you know, one person, one household, not larger petitions or developers. And so we're trying to keep those reasonable so people could still kind of factor those in to their costs and be able to still get signs, for example, at a reasonable cost. The yellow highlighted use variance, outdoor seating and right-of-way excavation are things that we don't do anymore, either because they're in the engineering department, which left last year, or because they came out of the UDO in the 2019-2020 update. We added in floodplain development permit, which came into the UDO at that update time. And we are proposing to increase our grading permit fee to have a flat fee and then an amount per acre. What we have now is just an amount per acre. And so, for example, if we're doing a semi-small site, it may cost something like $8 for the fee, when in fact, you know, staff is spending roughly the same amount of time getting together and discussing those items. So we are proposing relatively small increases in most areas, proposing to list all rezones as one type as opposed to differentiated between single family and non-single family, and have one fee there as well. I can answer any questions.
Just one clarification, quick, that you indicated that the outdoor seating in the right-of-way and the right-of-way excavation were both no longer part of?
They are no longer part of planning and transportation. They are both issued by the engineering department.
Okay, great. All right. Any other questions about these changes? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Jackie.
Make sure.
I wanted to ask about, it looks like some have doubled, but the preliminary and final has gone from 300 to 1,000, is that right? Is that?
Yes, so you can see here that a primary plat under the old amount was 300 plus a certain amount per lot. A secondary plat was 300 plus 25 per lot, and then filing them together was also 300, and then just the double lot cost. First of all, we don't prefer that they're filed together anymore. That creates a lot of confusion. And actually, I think here, I apologize, I think this should be 800. It was supposed to just be the cost of them together. We were going back and forth about how much to charge for the secondary plat. So if you do approve this, we would ask that that fee for preliminary and final be 800 plus 100 per lot. It's
Okay.
not beneficial to us, really, for them to be filed together. It is a possibility, so we left it in here because it's kind of something the department's done over time, but we would like the fee to be the same.
Okay, thank you. And
Thanks for asking.
Yep, and I wanted to ask under site plan, final plan, the next section down, I see on residential addition, it has a new fee in red, but that is for new dwelling units. But then the next one down, I don't understand that one. It has 400 plus 25 and then 500 plus 25, but it doesn't say new. Is that two different fees for
Sure.
residential new construction?
Sure, sorry, I should have said at the beginning that the red is all of the new text, and that if there's a vertical line, then it would be replacing what's to the left.
Okay, so I didn't know that wasn't in yellow.
Yeah,
so,
sorry.
Okay,
So
gotcha. All
addition
right.
would be 250 flat plus 25 for any new units you're adding, and then in new construction, all the units are new, so we just said 500 plus 25 per unit.
Okay, so the black to the left of the
The black
red
will
will
all
go
come
away?
out. Yes,
Okay.
apologies.
And my last question is under grading, closer to the bottom. It's $100 plus 125 an acre. Just to clarify, you pay 125 an acre plus $100 on top of that. Is that
Correct.
right?
So you
Okay.
pay $100, and then if you have a 1 acre site, you also pay, your total will be 225.
Okay, great, thank you.
One more question. When do these go into effect?
These would go into effect as soon as they're approved, I believe, yes.
Okay. And is there a process for notifying people, or what's the notification? Any technical notification needs on this?
I'll let Mike answer that.
Okay. Thanks.
So what we'll do is update the rules of procedure, I think it's Article 3, that's in the posted administrative manual. We'll try to get that done as soon as possible so that it's accurate on the website. And then when anyone calls for any of these types of permits, we would talk to them about it. And just to be clear, nothing here, the building permit fees that you do per square foot for an actual building aren't listed here. We contract with Monroe County to do that. So those fees are in the rules and procedure. I think it's up to 14 cents a square foot, and we aren't proposing to change that at all. We updated that a couple of years ago. So this is only commercial and multifamily type permits.
Any other questions about these fees?
And Chris has his hand up, I think.
Yes.
Commissioner
Hi,
Cockrell.
Commissioner Kinsey. Yes. So Jackie, thank you. And obviously, it's been a long time since the fees have been raised. And can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So first question, and I know this is more of a city council decision, but how much of our budget are the fees that we take in?
Oh, that's such a good question. The answer is all of our fees go to the general fund. So
Thank you.
we won't directly benefit from an increase as a department. And Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and then,
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, did we get an answer? Oh.
Or did you, I think you may not have heard the answer. They all go to the
Yes,
general
well-
fund?
Okay, great. And then the other thing I just want to make a statement is I just caution as we raise fees because many times, and not that I don't feel it's justified because these still seem very affordable, but I want to be very sensitive to it because ultimately in a development project, these fees are pushed on to the end user, which is the tenant or, of a project. And, in an effort to try to keep things affordable housing, I just caution as we raise fees. So not that I won't support this, but I just want to make that statement.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with your concern about anytime we're raising fees, it is passed on to the end user. So there is some concern about what that does when we're trying to stimulate affordable housing. So, but given the time between the last fee increase, this seems perhaps past due, at least some review of fees to put them more in line with what they ought to be and where staff time is being dedicated. So we have a proposed fee structure in front of us with one correction. Let me make sure we have that right. The correction is on the plat amendments. The plat amendments for preliminary and final should not be 1,000 as indicated, but 800. Is that the right place?
Yeah, so the third line down under plats and plats amendments, the preliminary and final line should say 800 plus 100 per lot.
Okay. All right. So with that correction, do we need to do any further discussion on this one? If anyone is here for public comment about this?
That's at your discretion. If you want to invite public comment, you're more than
Okay.
welcome to do that on this particular matter, but it's not required.
All right, well, we have a public here, and it's nice to see a public here. Do anyone have any public comments about these fees? All right. If not, we can move to a motion to approve these fees with that one correction in the fee schedule.
I have just one more question. On the hybrid meeting format, are there people on Zoom, as we have had before?
Thank
that
you.
Might have a question?
There's a lot to attend to here.
There is.
A lot going on. Yes, so we do want to remind those on Zoom that if they have comment when we're taking
Okay.
public comment, to either message me or raise their virtual hand, and then I'll let you know. We don't have any currently raised at this time.
Okay, so I know everyone just heard that. How many people do we have on Zoom? We do have some non-commissioners on Zoom?
We do have some we have a number of people here who are specifically here as petitioners' representatives, but I do think we have some members of the public as well.
Okay, great. All right, good. Okay, so everybody knows that now, that we will try and help me remember to try
Great.
and attend to the Zoom participants too, and they need to raise their hand if they have questions. And that we do have an audience here as well. Okay, so fee schedule approval. Do we have a motion to accept this fee schedule revision?
I'll make a motion to accept the new changes in the fee schedule.
All right, thank you. With that one correction from 1,000 to 800. I'll just add that. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrell. All right, okay, and now we need to do a voice vote again.
Okay, Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
and St. John.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we have a unanimous approval on this new fee schedule. Thank you. All right, so we have several petitions that have been continued to April. To continue these, I think we need, again, a voice vote for this one, to continue the 4 petitions indicated on
They
to
are
April.
already continued. You do not need to vote on
Oh,
them.
good. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, they were continued with enough time that they were allowed to be continued.
Great, perfect. Okay, then we can keep going through the agenda.
If
So-
you want to, I'll briefly say what they are in case someone is here
Sure,
for them, if that's
okay.
okay. We've got the Robert V. Shaw project at 3500 North Hackberry. That is something we're working on. That's a long-term enforcement case, working on that. So you should see that in the next few months, I would think. The MGH apartment complex at 17th and Arlington, near the northeast corner. 3111 South Walnut Street Pike, Walnut Pike Development is formerly known as Ivy Chase, subdivision there. And then we have a site plan at 3000 and 3070 South Walnut Street for Strausser Construction for self-storage. Those have all been continued.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right, so we're moving to the consent agenda. We have one item, one parcel on the consent agenda, SP 0722 Grant Properties at 613 East 12th Street. This is a request for a major site plan approval to construct a 4-story building with 3 floors residential over a ground floor parking garage with 8 vehicle parking spaces and 2 bicycle parking spaces. This is on our consent agenda, so usually consent agenda items are non-controversial. I don't know if there's anyone here who would like to talk about this item, or if any of our commissioners want this consent agenda item to receive a full hearing. But if there is anyone, please say so now. If you're here to talk about this item, we can move it for a public hearing if anybody feels that that's necessary. Anyone on Zoom here for this one? Okay. All right. If we're all okay with the consent agenda item, then we can move this to approval if there's a motion for to approve the consent agenda.
I would motion approval of consent agenda item SP-07-22.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Cockrum. All right, and we can go to a vote for this one. I don't know if there's any other public comment we need to do first on this one. Nobody has a concern? Okay, all right. So we can go to a vote.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Ballard. And Burrell.
Yes.
And I'm missing, Cockrum.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, all right, unanimous on that consent agenda item, great. All right, so now we can move to our petitions. We have 2 petitions with property, and then the rest are UDO amendments. So we'll begin with PUD 0322 Trinitis Ventures at 1550 North Arlington Park Drive. And this is a request for an amendment to the district ordinance and preliminary plan for an approval for the planned unit development. So I think we have Eric as the case manager, and I think Eric is remote. Yes.
I am, yes, thank you. So this is a request for Trinitas Development for the project site that they recently had approved about the past year and a half or so to allow for the redevelopment of about 40 acres on the northwest side of town This was approved as a planned unit development and encompassed many different housing types within that development in the PUD. So they are here tonight to request an amendment to the approved preliminary plan and district ordinance for the PUD to allow for signage to be placed at the two respective road frontages. So specifically, the request is to amend the PUD to allow for lots that will be about 3 feet wide at the 17th Street side and about 10 feet wide at the Arlington frontage. So you can see here in this exhibit, it kind of shows the overall area that is being developed. The two areas that we are focusing on are these two long slivers of lots that you see along Arlington Road to the east, and then along the internal drive along Arlington Park Drive to the south. So just a real quick overview for the project. Nothing is changing with the development standards for the development as a whole. The project consisted of 4 different areas. Area A was single family housing. Area B were townhomes and duplexes. Area C was a large multifamily building. And then Area D, again, were a bunch of duplexes as well. So the property had all internal roads within that. There were 2 road connections that were shown to 17th Street to the south. There was Arlington Park Drive, and then a new road connection, and then a road connection through an existing lot that they'd purchased that connected to Arlington Road. So each of these roads, as I mentioned, were completely public. Their district ordinance allowed for signage, allowed for freestanding signage. However, the development did not actually have road frontage on those respective roads. They did not have land that was contiguous with their development that touched on those road frontages. That was not something that was built into their district ordinance. So they are amending that, as I mentioned, to allow for these 2 lots to be created that would be long slivers of land that would connect to their overall development and then extend out to the road frontages. So I'll just kind of briefly step through each of those respective frontages to explain what's going on. So this would be what is on the screen now is for the section that would connect to Arlington Road. This was the lot that was purchased that is approximately 74 feet wide. This particular lot would be completely used for the road connection for this development to Arlington Road. This was previously shown as completely dedicated within right-of-way. So all 74 feet of this was going to be dedicated. This particular section had a 5-foot side or a 5-foot tree plot and a 10-foot multi-use path along the north side, and then a 5-foot tree plot and a 5-foot sidewalk along the south side. Those would all be remaining. But as you can see here, they would be keeping a 3-foot long strip along that entire 430 feet long section of road that would widen out to about 10 feet out at the road that would contain the sign. So for the most part, this would be a 3-foot long piece of property that would extend all the way out to Arlington just for the purpose of that signage. So the reason for these amendments is so that the signage is on the property that the petition owns and that property is contiguous with the rest of the development. There is not a provision within the district ordinance or an allowance within the UDO for off-premise signage. So they have to have land that is contiguous with their development in order for them to have signage on it. So that is the main impetus for these long sections of property that are being proposed here. So it's a very similar situation for the portion that connects to Arlington Park Drive. This would be a 3-foot long strip of land that would connect with the rest of the development and then extend out to 17th Street for the signage. In both of these situations, the signs that they are proposing are identical. These would be 6-foot tall, 30 square foot, externally illuminated freestanding signs that you can see here. The proposed signs would meet their allowances within these districts for size and height and illumination. So in that regards, they would be compliant. So what they are requesting, the main backing of their request, as I mentioned, is to allow for these long slivers of land to extend from their development out to the adjacent road frontages. While we certainly understand their desire to have signage on these entrances, This is not too unlike many developments that we have where there are private or public roads that get back to the development that just are not allowed signage outside of the actual land that they own. While the petitioner's request to create these lots that are 3 foot wide and extend out to the road frontage does, allow for signage on the property that they own, these long strips of property are essentially unbuildable. They do not meet the minimum lot width requirements, which is one of the deviations that they're requesting, obviously. However, these long slivers of land, as I mentioned, are not buildable. They do not really present any kind of benefit to the development or the community as a whole, and really are just for the explicit purposes of getting more signage out on the road. So certainly the UDO and many of our standards are designed to reduce visual clutter along road frontages. And so we do not feel that this particular amendment presents really a benefit or an improvement to the petition, or is something that we feel like really furthers some of the goals of the comprehensive plan in terms of new and imaginative concepts and creative urban design. So in that regard, we do find or recommend that the Planning Commission forward this petition to the Common Council with a negative recommendation, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Do we have someone from the petitioners who will present this? And if you could please state your name and
Jeff Kay would be the petitioner.
Oh, we have
Okay,
someone here in
I think he's here.
Chambers, Eric.
Good evening. My name is Austin Tracy. I'm a development manager. I work with Jeff as well on the project. 201 Main Street, Suite 1000, Lafayette, Indiana, 47901. Appreciate you presenting the background on the petition, Eric. As you mentioned, we are seeking to amend the PUD. We're not seeking to create brand new skinny lots. It's kind of a narrow strip of land that are just attached to existing lots. So I did want to clarify that. These aren't going to be 3-foot lots itself. They are attached to the larger lots. And then along with that, we've added a little bit of clarity to some PUD language for the retail space in Area C. So that's kind of just attached to this. The bigger issue is the signage. We've been working with staff on this petition since November. Through that time, they've made various requests, and we've tried to accommodate everything they've asked for, and I feel like we've done that. The goal really is to allow monument signs along 17th and Arlington to guide public and emergency vehicles to the property. And this was a solution that we coordinated with staff. Signage along these two frontages were agreed to in the approved PUD. As it was written in the PUD, we had one freestanding sign is proposed near one of the two entrances on 17th Street, and one freestanding sign is proposed near the entrance on Arlington Road. Each of these signs has a maximum square footage of 36 square feet per side and a maximum height of 6 feet. We feel that the signage along 17th and Arlington is critical to the leasing and marketing efforts, and it's imperative to the general safety of the property. Due to the property kind of being tucked behind existing houses and trees, without the proper signage, there's likely going to be issues directing traffic back there. And in the case of emergency vehicles, we feel that this is almost a matter of safety to properly guide people back to our property. We really don't want to build anything other than signs on these strips of land. We have easements around the signage coordinated with staff. We're willing to add any other language. It's just imperative for us to have this signage along the main streets. As I mentioned, we worked with staff, and this was, we acknowledged it's not ideal to have signs in public right-of-way, and this is really the only solution to get signs there. And it's always been the intent. It was in the approved ordinance. This is something that was intended from the start of this project. Regarding the modification to the PUD language, we really just wanted to add clarification to the commercial space in Area C. We're currently considering some podcast YouTube studio space in this area, and we feel that it fits the permitted uses from the ordinance. We just didn't have anything specifically allowing that. We had other stuff that mentioned studio space and professional space, but nothing specific to podcast YouTube space. And if we were going to present this PUD amendment, we felt that we might as well just add this explicitly in the PUD ordinance to prevent any confusion. With that, I'll turn it over for questions or further comment.
Great, thank you. All right, well, we'll begin with questions from the commissioners, and I'll start, we'll try and do this orderly. Maybe we'll have everybody here, and then we'll move to people on Zoom. So I don't know if we'll go to my right first.
Okay. Well, thank you for the presentation there. So just by a quick look here, like it's obviously a very large capital investment your group's making. So over 337 multi-units that include 825 beds, 125 on-street, 82 spaces on. This is extensive, 40 acres. So I guess you're asking for 2 areas to put a sign with the dimensions of 5 feet tall?
Yeah, it'd be like 6 feet by 6 feet, just large monument signs
Right.
along Arlington and 17.
Right,
Where
because,
the main
because you're obviously advertising a very large development.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's not in the most easy to get to, like obviously we all know the 7th Street corridor project.
Yeah, you're well aware of, I mean, the mid-rise is at full height right now, and
Right.
you can drive through there and not see that building.
Right. And there's no other real use for these slivers. There's
No.
nothing else you could be constructing, putting in
No.
there, green space.
Yep, right, and we have easements on there, so you can go across. We'll put in any language. We really, it's just about the signs. We can put restrictive language, we'll do anything for the signs, pretty much.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions to my right?
I guess I'll start with a question for staff. So it sounds like there's really 2 things that were asked to being looked at here. One is the strip of land to create a spot for a sign, and the other is maybe a more minor, but also still a change to the use. And I think in quickly reading the staff reports, and it was a lot of conversation about the sign, but I don't know if maybe I missed the part about the use, and I'm curious if staff can respond to that component of the request.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize. I did not add that specific section. They were amending to modify some of the uses within there a little bit. We didn't have any issues with those modifications. That was just a minor aspect of the request. The main aspect of the request was for the signage and the creation of those lots or the strips of land that will be connecting to their main lots.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I guess my other question is more towards the petitioner. On the sign specifically, mentioning that one of the reasons wanting it is for public safety. And I'm curious if any public safety providers have suggested that such a sign is necessary.
That is something that came from our property management team, they run our properties across the country, and that was one of the areas identified on one of their site visits, just how hard it was to find the actual property. Yeah, just how hard it was to actually find the property for the site visit, and they're the ones that kind of amped up this level of concern to our development team that, hey, this is more than just a convenience thing. We couldn't find this site.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions to my left?
I did just want to follow up on Commissioner Seabor's question about the change in use that, Eric, you said you don't have any issue with. I'm not sure I know what the change, what it is, what we're supposed to, are we supposed to vote on that? And if so, maybe some clarifying statement as to what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, their request is to basically, in terms of the use, to widen the use list a little bit to allow for some more uses within that. So as I mentioned, we don't have any issues with that regard. Their request, unfortunately, as it is, all encompassing of changes, we're not really sure how to break out, honestly, approving a change to the use. That would have to be an amendment, a friendly amendment that happens with the Common Council with that approval. So that is something that we would clarify in the memo to the council when that goes to that. At this point here, the Plan Commission certainly can just make a recommendation. So if they have no issue with the use change, then that would be a positive recommendation in that regard. If they have an issue with the signage, then that would be a negative recommendation in that regard. So we would just want to, I guess, clarify from the Plan Commission which of those two aspects they do or do not have feelings one way or the other. Yeah, does that help answer your question? I'm sorry.
I think so. So it looks like it's an amendment to, that would expand the use for things such as video podcast studio space. Is that your understanding? I mean, I know
Yes.
you, but yeah, okay.
Just to add, from our perspective, when we wrote the PUD, it was like a copy-paste of the uses from your ordinance. And I mean, when the ordinance was written, no one had anticipated podcast, YouTube studio space. So we believe like the intent of that ordinance section allows that, but we're presenting to the board, we might as well get the formal clarification so there's no confusion or concern, was our
Yeah,
thought.
absolutely. I just wasn't sure
Yeah.
what we were even just making a recommendation on to council. So it's to expand to those kinds of uses, which I don't have any problem with, but I did want clarification. If you're asking this commission to make some recommendation, I think we have to know what it's for.
I'll say, on page 51 of the packet is the existing permitted uses in Area C, and these come from our old code. And then on page 41 is the blurb about the revision, indicating that it would be redefined to include small commercial space providing coffee, tea, food or snacks, video, podcast, studio space, or other commercial uses permitted by ordinance. So I believe, and Eric can correct me if I'm wrong, that everything that's currently listed in Area C stays, and then these kind of more particular non-UDO exactly written uses go in.
Okay. Thank you.
Eric, this might be for you about the safety concerns that were expressed, or perhaps, actually, it may not be safety, but it's more maintenance concerns associated with this property. Can you elaborate on the concerns that this raises for maintaining this roadway?
Well, so I believe, as the petitioner said, the concerns were raised by their property managers. We haven't had anything raised so far from any public utilities, police department or fire department. I mean, this isn't too dissimilar from, other situations where, you turn down one road and then you go down another road and, whatever series of directions you follow to get to a development. There are lots of developments that just don't have frontage on, the larger roads that they connect to from. So it's, not too dissimilar from other situations. Everybody obviously is going to know where this development is. And, there are many roads within here, many houses within here. So this is just, subdivision that is back off of the main roads. I mean, I guess I don't know how else to really kind of go into that. Yes, they're accessed from, 2-3 different local public roads that will lead into this development. Yes.
I guess I was actually referring to maintenance of the roadway that could be a city concern. It was indicated in here that there was some concern about maintaining the road with that 3-foot, essentially land, a 3-foot strip that's owned by the property owners. Does that present a unique challenge in terms of maintenance?
Yeah, no, the presence of the strip of land does not change maintenance of the road. Nothing really will be changing within the approved cross sections of those two streets. So the road will still be able to maintain, it'll still be the normal travel lane width. The approved cross sections for sidewalks and tree plots aren't changing. There's just, so that shouldn't change with this aspect.
Okay. All right. And I guess my only other question is, are there other places that signs can go if, I understand the need to have good signage. I mean, that seems like a reasonable thing. But it is very odd to have this 3-foot strip to be contiguous. And I just wonder if there are other logical places for signs to go, or was this thought about at the beginning of this project and just, I don't know, forgotten or, missed somehow?
Yeah, no, they should. So I'm going to just briefly go back to some of my exhibits here to help answer your question a little bit. So yes, they can have signage, and they can have freestanding signage on their development. So they can have it, as soon as Telluride. So Telluride is a street that comes in from Arlington that leads in this development. So there can be a freestanding sign on Telluride as soon as you come in from the east. And then there can also be a freestanding sign coming in from Arlington Park Drive if you come in from the south. So you can have freestanding signs as soon as you enter the development. They are just requesting this amendment to have the signage extend further away from the development out on the more main streets, I guess, that you turn off of to get into the development for these roads.
Yeah, to add to that, I think the intent was to always have signage along Arlington and 17th. As I mentioned, it's written into the PUD to allow that. I think the logistics of that maybe weren't fully thought out until it got down to it, and we realized we couldn't have the signs in the right-of-way, at which point we started exploring the options, and this is kind of how it came down to it. We acknowledge there are spots on site where we can have the monument sign, but it doesn't necessarily do us much good because you can't see those from Arlington, and it's very hard to see the property as you drive that corner with the houses and tree coverage. That's really our main concern.
Mm-hmm.
If I can add on to that, I think Erica's already said this, but just to reiterate, they aren't driveways coming out onto Arlington and 17th. They're public roads. They're going to be built to public road standards. They're going to have road signs. So if you live back there and you're giving someone directions to your house, you're not saying like drive down Arlington and then search for my subdivision. You're saying turn right on Telluride or whatever the road names end up being. Right now, it seems odd, when he's saying that the development team goes out and they can't find the site because the roads don't exist yet. So yes, having a flagger out there or somebody when people go out to the site now makes sense, but they will be roads with sidewalks and signs, and you'll just turn on that road like you do any other road, and then when you hit the actual subdivision where the actual property and homes that are privately owned by the developer, when you hit that space, then there's room for signage there. And that's where code allows signs. Code doesn't allow signs in the right-of-way. It's been that way since 2015 when we had the code update because of the Supreme Court decision. Code doesn't allow off-premise signage. That's been that way for decades because of the proliferation of billboards. That just is what this is. I think if these roads weren't public, maybe there would be, and they weren't going to have signs, and people didn't use their smartphones, and we didn't have GPS, and it's not 1995 and you're looking for a driveway. They're going to be public roads, they're going to be signed, they're going to be in your Google map. We just don't, we set precedent here, and we want to be careful about situations where we're kind of saying that, yes, we see that the road that you're connected to out there is maybe more important or easier for you to draw people in from, so we're going to let you put a sign out there. You can put signs on the roads on which you're located, and that is the rule for everyone. So that's our main issue here. I think there are other issues. I don't know, Eric can correct me if I'm wrong. I do think that the cross-section for the connection to 17th is odd looking. Where is that 3 foot coming from? They only had 50 feet before, and now it's 50 plus 3, because we don't want that cross-section to get any smaller, because currently code, based on the transportation plan, wants 60 feet. Well, we're only getting 50 here because that's what they have. So we just I think there are a couple of other maybe small issues, but the gist is these will be public roads. There's room for signage on site. that's what all of our other subdivisions do. You know, it does seem odd now, but once it's developed, it's going to be a large subdivision back there. And if you're going back there, you'll be able to find it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, we have one more question. Go ahead.
I do, actually, two questions.
Okay, two.
So going back to Commissioner Kinsey, Eric, this is for you. Had a question. This is on page 34 of the packet under item number 3. I think it is what she was alluding to under that it shall not result in significant adverse fiscal impacts on the city. Under the proposed findings, there is a statement there that I would like, I think you were asking about. It appears that the desired right-of-way along Arlington Park Drive may reduce below 50 feet, which is not desirable to the city for future maintenance of the road right-of-way. And I am curious what that means.
I can speak to that. I'm sure
Okay.
I wrote it. If Eric doesn't want to. Basically, just what I was indicating right now, which is that for local or smaller non-classified roads, now, since we've adopted the transportation plan, we always want 60 feet. So we're only getting 50 here, so it's tighter than we would like. And I find it unclear in the drawing whether or not the 3 feet that they're asking for is coming out of that 50 or is adjacent to that 50. If it's adjacent, then we're not getting any less than we already thought we were, but I find it unclear. So we put it in there that, you know, if they are pulling that 50 and now pushing that right away to 47, that's undesirable. That's 13 feet less than we normally would ask now for a development. And so we would not want to support it for that reason. Does that make sense?
So what is the issue with what is the future maintenance of the road right-of-way that would be impacted?
Well, so the items that are in the right-of-way, right, so that are held by public. So once they become public roads and they're built, then they're our responsibility. So if anything were to happen to the roads, sidewalks, or street trees, then we would be fixing those items in a reduced width, which we already are, but it would be even more so.
Right, so there's less room to work.
Correct.
Okay, second question is, the new public roads that you indicated would go in, do we know what the name of those roads would be? And more curious, what would the address be of people who live in this building?
Sure, so
Or
there's
buildings.
multiple buildings going here, you'll recall, but they, on their primary plat, which you saw, they do have road names already. Telluride is one of them. That's the major road that comes off 17th and goes all the way through to Arlington. And then they have other similarly themed names, Aurora, Arvada, and Englewood.
So if someone lives there, is their address one of those new public roads
Correct.
that comes off of 17th Street or off of Arlington?
Correct.
It's not some other road?
No.
So if I'm looking for someone that lives at 1574 Telluride, I'm going to see the Telluride street sign?
Correct.
Off of 17th or
Correct.
Arlington? Okay, thank you.
Petitioner, any clarification on the space or the
Yeah, it's 3 feet, and then the right-of-way is 50 feet.
50 feet?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. All right. Any other questions from in the room here? All right. Yeah.
So it's 50 feet and then 3 feet. Is the 3 feet taking from the 50 feet or adding to the 50 feet?
It's added to, so it's 53 feet, and then the right-of-way, like 53 feet total. 3 feet of that is our little lot strip. 50 feet's your
So
right-of-way.
have you acquired additional property for this, or
No, I think there was just confusion in how we had it drawn up originally.
Okay. All right. Okay, so now we'll go to our two plan commissioners participating remotely. Anything from Commissioner Cockrum or Burrell?
This is Commissioner Cochran. No, my questions were answered by Jackie. So Jackie, thank you for that explanation. So I think all my questions have been answered.
Okay, we'll give a second for Commissioner Burrell. Anything?
Yes. I guess my questions is in the ownership of this little piece of land. So you say this is going to be a public road. Who owns this? Is this an easement, or is this just a piece of land that is part of the development? I mean, it's the developer owns this piece of land, and they are putting the road, and the road will be dedicated to the city of Bloomington. I'm just trying to understand where this 3 feet piece of land came from.
Yeah, so as you just mentioned there, there will still be 50 feet of dedicated right-of-way, and then running along parallel with that would be a 3-foot strip of ground owned by the petitioners that would join up with the rest of the overall land that they own.
So they already own this land?
Yes, they have. They've purchased the land. Well, so one of them, you know, the Telluride, they purchased that lot as part of the overall development. The Arlington Park Drive, they've worked with the existing property owners. So that land is actually owned by the adjacent property owners, but they've worked with them to acquire that land, to dedicate that for the right-of-way for the road.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the only question then from? All right, okay. If we're ready, we can move to some public comment on this petition. So if anyone from the public, either on Zoom or in our council chambers today, have a comment on this comment? Please raise your hand if you're in the Zoom environment, so we know you have a question on this petition. Not seeing anything? Okay. All right, nobody from the public is rushing to the podium here, so, okay, all right. So we can entertain a motion, or if there's additional comments or questions on this petition. I'll just say, I have some concerns on both sides. I understand the need for signage and the value in signage, but I also see some real concern with many businesses that might want to get signage out on a main roadway in order to improve people's ability to get to their particular business or residential space. You know, I can imagine other businesses that are on the side streets of Walnut wanting signage directly on Walnut versus on where they have to do it on their property on a side street. So I guess I have some concerns about fairness and what the our in this case district ordinance already indicates. So I'm a little conflicted about what we're trying to serve here. I do appreciate very much the property that's being developed. I think this is a great project, and I certainly don't want to make it hard for people to get there, but I don't see it as being exceptional in any other way, particularly given the fact that these are public roadways. So I guess I would favor actually making a motion to accept the staff recommendation for at least the signage issue, that we would put this forward with a negative recommendation. But I do think the proposed use change in terms of clarity about the retail space allowance for podcasts seems perfectly fine. So I don't know if we can do these in separate recommendations or separate motions, or if they can be, because they would have different outcomes.
I think you could do either. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you could do it as one motion, or you could take them separately. It'd probably be better to do separate.
Yeah, it would be bifurcated if that's the way you want to raise a motion. It's up to you.
Okay. All right, so I don't know if we have a motion out here, or if there's any other additional discussion on this item. Anything else we need to clarify here?
I mean, I think just one more quick comment. Given the scope of the project, I think they're putting it into context. This seems like it's maybe some new territory for the city, for the developers. Understanding setting the precedent, but I think it's also the logic behind why you would want something with this much development impacting a large number of people who are frequenting this as their home, be it students, be it individuals, families, whatever, plus the thoroughfare of traffic with police, fire department, things like that. I mean, to me, I feel like it's it's a reasonable ask considering the size of the development and the number of people this is going to house. Again, considering we know what housing is doing in the city, and in the county, and in the country. So I just think this seems like a kind of a small request that would be on a case-by-case basis going forward. If we have other groups coming in with this size of scope, with this many people being impacted, then we take it as a case-by-case thing, which I would more than welcome that. I just think, to me, this is a fair ask, given the scope of the project.
I think I side with the staff recommendation on this proposal, potentially being supportive of the use request, though. I'm thinking of other projects in the city that we're looking at, like there's been a lot of development north of TAP off of Adams Street in that vicinity, and I could very easily see a development saying, I want the sign out on TAP for my very significant subdivision, and just having similar concerns with that. I have worked a lot with emergency responders, and I've never, ever heard one request a monument sign to help them respond to an emergency. They require street name signs that are reflective, they're standard, they're required at public intersections, and that would be provided here. I think I'm still unsure. I think we heard from the applicant that the right-of-way widths would be maintained at the, but I am still just, the drawings don't show that. I'm just a little concerned with that aspect. And this also potentially creates what in some places might be called things like spite strips, and then there's potential ways to address that through easements and things, but it just gets really complicated if you're an adjacent property and you want to get a driveway to these new city streets, and you have to go through somebody else's property now. So there just introduces extra complexities that need to be managed over time. So I fail to see the public need, the public benefit from this request, but with all that being said, I don't want it to sound like this is, it's a good project, it's approved, it's more just speaking to the specific amendment to the project. But thanks.
Yes, go ahead.
And comment, I'm sympathetic to the developer's request. I just don't find the reasons too compelling. I agree, I think emergency responders are gonna have I mean, they get into neighborhoods all the time, and there's really huge neighborhoods they get into. The fact that people who live there, their address will be those streets that are marked on the major thoroughfares. It's too much of a sort of a break in the rules to sort of approve it. So I don't find the reasons too compelling. So I will vote in favor of the staff's recommendation.
Do we have commissioners online or that would like to comment?
Commissioner Cochran here. I'm so appreciative of what Trinitis is doing back there. And I just want to echo the other commissioners' comments as well. But you guys have taken a property that's backed by the highway there, and you've made it a really great property with a ton of housing. So very sympathetic to what you're doing, and I want it to be successful as the whole community does. However, and if you guys, I think the turning point is if it was a private road, no problem at all. Being a public road and the responsibility of the city, I think we need to trust the system that we have, which is the road signs and the way that the entire city is set up. From somebody who works with many, many businesses around town, if we were to allow a monument sign like this, I'm afraid Planning Commission would be inundated with requests, because signage is obviously something that many businesses feel that will make or break their project. So I don't think it'll break this project not to have signage. And I'm going to go with staff recommendation. But again, just know that your project is very appreciative and we want it to be successful. We just need to stay within the system that we have. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Cochran. Commissioner Burrell, did I see your hand raised too?
Yes, well, the understanding about what is this road was very important. Knowing that it's a public road that needs to have, at least 60 feet wide entrance, and we're already doing it at 50 feet, which is already an exception. And then if you add a 10-foot sign or a 10-foot lot in there, because it's 3 feet beyond the 50 feet, so you have 7 feet encroaching into the 50 feet. Is this going to be more dangerous and cause, cars not to be able to see the road? I don't know. I can't answer those questions. My one interesting question I have, though, and I know we're past question times, is if this was approved if there was something approved in the PUD, what was the understanding that they thought something was approved and now they can't do it? I think there's some confusion there. If Jackie could talk about that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, so I can
There
just
you
real
go.
briefly answer that for you. So the allowance in the PUD allowed for freestanding signs on the property as a whole. The location of those wasn't deviated with their district ordinance that they approved. They didn't have actual street frontage shown out on those roads. Staff's position is, we approve the district ordinance with the rules and regulations, but we don't troubleshoot every single aspect of it, knowing that they think that they're going to be able to have the signage out on those major thoroughfares. So the district ordinance allows for the freestanding signs, but they still have to be on property that they own. So that's what they're trying to solve now, is get that to be out on the roads where they would most desire those. But that's where, our challenge is right now of, the proposal that they have to solve that problem, just doesn't really work with what we want to see for overall development and a precedent for signage, which I think is what a lot of commissioners have kind of already touched on tonight in their comments. So this was, Fisher's attempt to solve that problem. As I mentioned, we've worked with them to put together, the best case scenario of how you could possibly allow it. That still doesn't mean that's something that, we want to see approved or is appropriate for development, but, this is their attempt to solve that problem.
Thank you.
All right. I don't know if we have any other comments, but we'd be ready for a motion if there is one. And I think we should do these as two separate issues. It sounds like there's agreement on that. So do we have a motion there was staff recommendation is the department recommends that the Plan Commission forward this petition to the Common Council with a negative recommendation.
So I will just because we have a new Plan Commission member and just because this is odd, remind you that we need 5 votes for any recommendation. So 5 people to agree to be able to pass something along. And that for an amendment to a plan unit development, you aren't making a final decision. You're making a recommendation to council one way or the other. We try to send either a positive or a negative recommendation. Thanks.
Great. Well, I'll put the motion out to accept the staff recommendation to forward this petition regarding the amendment to the district ordinance regarding the land use with a negative recommendation. So that's a motion. We have a second.
I'll second that, and we're talking about the sign.
Correct.
Part,
Yeah,
yes.
this is about land and sign
I'll
first.
second
All right. So we have
Okay.
this up, ready for a vote.
Ready for vote. Ballard?
Yes.
Burrell?
Yes.
Cockrum?
Yeah.
Seabour?
Yes.
Let's see, Kinsey?
Yes.
And St. John?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so that gives us our 6 unanimous votes. All right, so that one goes with a negative recommendation, but now to consider the second part of this request is to let's see, we want to say that we are recommending a positive recommendation to approve a change in the retail space allowance. Does that seem clear enough, retail space, or
I think we would probably say positive recommendation to allow the additional uses requested by petitioner for retail space in Area C.
Okay. All right, so to allow additional uses in Area C.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
I will make a motion to approve as stated.
Second.
Excellent. Okay, we have a motion.
Sorry, just to clarify, that's a motion to recommend approval to council.
Yes.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for a vote?
St. John,
Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Ballard. Yes. Burrell,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, okay, so that settles PUD 0322 Trinitas Ventures. Okay. If we're ready to move on to the next petition, SP 0922 Trades District Technology Center at 617 North Madison Street, 422 West 10th Street. And it's a request for a major site plan approval to allow for one non-residential building in the mixed-use downtown Showers Technology Character Area. And I think Jackie Scanlon is going to present this.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so this, again, as Commissioner Kinsey said, is a request for major site plan approval. The site area is a portion of a 0.95 acre parcel located at the corner of Maker Way and Madison. And you can see that here, again, is in our Showers Technology overlay in the Trades District area just north of City Hall and the Monroe County Government Center. So it is obviously designated as downtown in the comprehensive plan. There's nothing there on site yet. You'll recall that the rights-of-way were built and improved a number of years ago to help facilitate the future development of the Trades District. And so this site would be our first new building in the area. North of the site is vacant. And south of the site, again, is the Monroe County Government Center with a parking lot to the east across Madison and west vacant as well. So again, requesting major site plan review. The reason that you'll see it tonight is because the major site plan threshold is 15,000 square feet and the building will contain roughly 21,000 square feet. So here is the overall site plan of the site, pretty straightforward, one building. You can see built kind of up in the corner of the two lots, except for that there is an area carved out at the northeast corner for a plaza area. The idea being that it would kind of reflect the outdoor area at the existing Showers building that is known as the Mill to the northeast of this area as well. Which is a lovely design, but doesn't exactly meet code requirements. So the front building setback is required a maximum of 15 feet from the proposed right-of-way for both Maker and Madison. And obviously this plaza creates a bit of an issue for that at the northeast corner. So there's a condition included that if you are to approve this design, a variance will be required from the Board of Zoning Appeals. For those who don't know, we won't discuss very much detail about that because we do have two members of the Plan Commission who are on the Board of Zoning Appeals. So just to let you know that a variance would be required, and that's typically all we say here at Plan Commission. So here is the site kind of split up by type of development. So the building in blue and then planting areas in green with hardscape in purple. The other issue for this site is that it is over our impervious surface coverage maximum with the design you see here. This is kind of an interesting issue for us because this lot doesn't exist yet. They are only proposing to develop a northern portion of a very long lot that actually extends down to 10th Street. So we have discussed with the petitioner, who is the city, but not someone from our department, that in order to address the impervious surface issue, we will either need to see a new design of the hardscape, or they will just need to move that line, that southern line, further south to make sure that they incorporate as much green space as is required here. So that is 25% of the lot needs to be green space, and they're currently only at 19.8. So we've added a condition of approval that line will need to be adjusted and or the hardscape adjusted to meet that requirement. So again, this is the area in context. As I said, this is it here in the center. As I said, it is just the northern portion of a long lot that goes all the way to 10th Street. So they will be doing a subdivision, and we have time limited that they will need to figure out exactly how big they want this lot to be and have that filed. I believe within 6 months is the first condition of approval. So this building, hold on, let me see here, sorry. Here is the first floor plan. It is going to be largely office. It's an office building. And 2 stories with a small 3rd story on top. And so you can see that a little bit better here with the elevations. Some choices made to reflect the kind of industrial history of this area, including the use of metal. That is something that will likely require a variance. You will see later tonight that the department is actually asking to add that in as an allowed primary use in this district based on some of our long-range plans that discuss that for this area. But it was left out when the overlay was originally written. And so the department thinks it's appropriate to add that back in. Then we also have this petition that's using it. So depending on when they go to build this building, they may need to request a variance if they would like to be able to use the metal. Otherwise, they're using metal. And then on the first floor, I believe, is a mixture of masonry, brick, and then metal above. And you can see also lots of open windows on all 3 floors and meets all of our requirements related to that as well. This building does not have parking and is not required to have parking, so you may have noticed on the site plan that there is no parking included, which is allowed for vehicles, for cars, but we will have bicycle parking on site and landscaping those areas that are open. So the petition is compliant with most of the UDO guidance except for the variances that I mentioned and in line with our adopted plans. And we recommend approval with the 5 conditions shown. First, as I mentioned, that the, primary plat, should say now, amendment to the existing lot needs to be filed within 6 months of the approval of the site plan. And then receiving a secondary plat approval before a grading permit will be issued. Number 2, as I mentioned, that they will either need to adjust the hardscape or lot size in order to meet their impervious surface requirements. Submitting a compliant landscape plan, which can only be done once we know the size of the lot. And then the variances mentioned that this petition is contingent upon approval of those variances, and that, of course, they need to receive a grading permit before they start. So with those 5 conditions, the department recommends approval of the petition. I can answer any questions.
Do we have someone that represents the property here too? Someone else from the city presenting on this?
I think Ms. Cooper-Smith is going to speak, yes.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm here on behalf of the Department of Economic and Sustainable Development. I'm Jane Cooper-Smith, representing the city on this project, which is actually a partnership between the City of Bloomington Redevelopment and the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation. And then Ashley Thornsberry is also with us tonight from Axis Architects in Indianapolis. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks. Okay. All right. So we'll go same drill. Questions in the live space here in the chamber. Anybody to my right have a question? Okay. Okay, to my left, okay. All right, well, I actually have a question about the entry points. I'm really curious, again, either Jackie or Jane, if someone could present or just point out how many different pedestrian entry points will there be? And to me, it's really exciting to see this space, to think about what is our main way in. Is Maker Way the new kind of main space for the build and presumably a building that might get built eventually next to it? Or is that Madison Street the main entry? Or will both include entryways?
Sure. So Ashley Thornberry is here with the design team. She may be able to describe it best to you, but I will screen share as well.
Yes. So there will be 2 pedestrian entrance points. The main one will be off of Madison, and that is with the recess of the northern bar to create that outdoor plaza area. And we also have a second pedestrian entrance on the west side over there, as you can see from that patio. And our stair will provide an egress down the southern portion of it. So 2 primary entrances. However, with that stair that Jackie currently has highlighted, that's going to be more restricted access into the building for security reasons. So it is more of just an egress from that stair.
So Maker's Way will not be an entrance?
It will not, no.
Okay, interesting. And then other question, perhaps for I guess you're the petitioners, Ashley and Jane, the idea about the green space and hardscape, do you have any thoughts about what I suppose that's a thing just to be worked out, is to assure the percentage of impermeable, or, to assure you're not exceeding impervious surface. But do you have some thoughts about adding green space or hardscape, how you want to go on that?
Our project team recommends lowering the southern property line so that we can meet that minimum 25% landscape open area. We have done preliminary calculations, and we will be able to meet that without changing the hardscape of the lot.
Great, yeah, I think that's very important for this space. Okay, great, thank you. All right, maybe we can move, yes, Commissioner Seabour has a question.
I guess a question, and maybe for the design team, but just the structure also faces an alley, and it's just hard looking through some of these schematic drawings where the trash enclosure and maybe some transformers are in relation to the right-of-way already on the existing relatively narrow alley. Just curious if you know where those are or if there's flexibility for them.
There is flexibility with the location of that. We are proposing to keep them along the alley so that they are not visible from either Maker Way or Madison Street. Where we're at in the design phase, we're trying to size those appropriately. It has been brought to our attention that the schematic plan is showing them beyond the right-of-way, so the final design will remove that, and they will be secure within the property boundary.
Great, thank you.
Great. All right, so any questions from our 2 commissioners on Zoom?
Hi, Commissioner Cochran here. The project looks fine, and I'm fine with the recommendations by planning staff. But just out of curiosity, and I might have missed this in the presentation, but do you have an intended use for the building, or is it something that you're going to build for future use, or can you answer those, or be at liberty to answer those?
We can. And this is Jane from ESD. So as you all know, I think this building was awarded, or this project is based on the award of an EDA CARES Act grant. And for that grant, we proposed the Technology Center, which is a tech commercialization space. So it's sort of a graduation space for the mill. So it's speculative in that we don't have tenants yet, but we're building it for potential users that we think are kind of next in line in the growth cycle. And then we will be doing a couple outreach events the last day of March. And those information about that will go out later this week.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anything from Commissioner Burrell?
No questions here, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we are here for public comment. If there's anyone from the public on Zoom or in our audience today? Nothing? Okay, we'll give a moment. Do we have anyone that I'm waiting, that I could be waiting on, Jackie, or is it just in our Zoom room?
We have two members of the news on Zoom, yes.
Okay, all right, okay. All right. So seeing nothing, no one rushing the podium either. Okay, so we can entertain a motion on this one if we're ready to move forward.
I just have a quick comment.
Yeah.
Before that. I think this is really exciting. I keep going back to slide 2 of the schematics, and it does show that walkway off Madison. It shows the plazas. Looks really exciting. I think it's a great opportunity for Bloomington, and I'm looking forward to supporting it. So when you're ready for a motion, I will motion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a great use of the grant funding for this project as well. This is terrific. So, yeah, ready? Mm-hmm. Okay.
We're motioning to approve this, right? Not to make a recommendation to. So,
Correct, the conditions.
motion to approve SP-09-22 with the 5 conditions as listed. And approval.
Yeah, do you want to show those conditions? Just so we're all clear what we're,
Just a sec.
the 5 conditions.
Oh, it's to it, yeah. I know you have to say adopt the findings, motion to adopt the
Yes.
findings of.
There you go, yeah. So this is a motion to adopt the findings and approve SP 0922 with those 5 conditions that you see before you. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. So we are ready for a roll call vote on this one.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Ballard? Yes. Seymour?
Yes.
St. John?
Yes.
Burrell?
Yes.
Cockrum?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so this is a 6 unanimous vote approval. All right, excellent. Okay, so now we can move on to a series of UDO amendments here, and I presume we're going to need to take these one at a time. They're all separately numbered. So we'll start with the first one, and I don't know, Jackie, how much detail you want to go into on each of these, but I think I very much appreciate the clarity in the red line comments on these, and the revisions are so clear in the document, but I presume we need to do this for public information.
We would like to ask, Mike, correct me if I say this incorrectly, if we could, the way that they're structured, I'd prefer if we could do ZO10 last, but you'll have to amend the agenda to do that.
Okay. All right, so that will be our first step, is to approve an amendment or a change in our agenda to move ZO10-22, the UDO technical text amendments, to be the last item that we review.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Can we have I guess that's a motion. I will call that a motion. Can we have a second for that change?
Second.
All right, and now we need another vote.
Ballard? Burrell?
Yes.
Seymour?
Yes.
Cockrum?
Yes.
Kinsey?
Yes.
And St. John?
Yes.
All right, so now we can consider ZO 1122.
Great. Okay. Let me see here. Okay, thank you. I don't know if I ever introduced myself at the beginning of the night. Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. Oh, sorry about that. We will look at ZO 1122. So first, just as an update or clarification for everyone joining us, the Planning and Transportation Department, through this memo and red line with tables, is proposing to amend the Unified Development Ordinance. This is a process we should be doing roughly annually. And the last UDO update was done in spring of last year, which became effective finally in July of last year, the last ordinance of the 10 that we brought, or the 9 that we brought forward last time. Those were large changes. We had a lot of public input, a lot of meetings. This is more on the kind of housekeeping or working with the code and finding things that needed to be changed side that we want to keep up with, so that when we do kind of overhaul updates, however often those get done, that we don't have as many kind of housekeeping ones as we did the last time, that we're keeping up on those. And if we're finding errors or things that aren't working quite right, or even, small policy things that we think need to be brought forward, that we're bringing those forward on a regular basis so everyone can kind of understand the challenges and we can get things fixed as quickly as possible. So the first ordinance we're going to discuss tonight is related strictly to Chapter 3. That's our use regulations chapter. So amendments related to uses allowed by the code. So I am going to share share the table that was in your packet and go through that. So as was mentioned, this is all in the packet, so I will not, read every line to you, but kind of give you an overview of what we're doing, and then, of course, happy to answer any questions. For ZO 1122, I believe there are a total of 8 amendments identified, and the majority of them are related to a maximum building floor plate for student housing. There were as you know, we introduced maximum building floor plate as a way to address a concern that we've had from the community about very large buildings being built. Was there a way to kind of have those be more right-sized, and or could they be larger if the incentives were being used? So incentives that we have had updated and put in the code related to affordable housing and sustainable development. So we have now had about 2 years to work with that portion of the code, and are proposing to reduce the base floor plate in student housing in some of our districts. So in our mixed-use neighborhood district, our residential multifamily, and then downtown zoning districts, as well as our residential high density and our other 2 mixed-use districts, mixed-use medium scale, and MC and MI zoning districts. So those are all scaled separately based on the district. So you can see them split up differently in the table. So that is how they are split in the code as well. For example, the MN mixed-use neighborhood is kind of our smallest commercial mixed-use zoning district. So you can imagine like MN is like the old V Foods on 2nd Street, because it's neighborhood scale, it's embedded in a neighborhood. It would have different effects in that location than maybe mixed use or commercial on South College. So they have different zoning districts. So the scales of the sizes are also related to the district. So reducing that square footage, for example, in the MN from 2,500 to 2,000, and then allowing that if you are going to do the incentives, that you can have larger buildings. So if you're going to do one incentive, then there's a one tier, slightly larger building. If you're going to utilize both incentives, then an even larger building. So that same pattern is across the mixed use and multifamily zoning districts. So you can see that reflected here in the table. And then again, in the MS zoning district, which is our mixed-use student housing zoning district, maximum floor plate reduced from 20,000 to 10,000 square feet per building. However, That, again, increased if you are going to do either or both of the incentives. So that's the kind of big changes for Chapter 3. You can also see in the first here, the first change, buildings with more than 20 dwelling units also now have a 10,000 square foot maximum floor plate. So floor plate is the size of each floor. I should have said that at the beginning. And that you can have larger, again, if you're going to do the incentives. So that won't capture, some of our smaller multifamily, which we are interested in and provides, a much needed different type of housing here in the community, but will capture some of our larger projects. And then we have here on the second page, the architectural requirements for garages. We don't really have any that are specifically garage related, and so we find that it's hard to kind of implement our existing architectural requirements in a realistic way for garages that aren't wrapped by commercial or residential. So trying to add some in here so that we can get interesting architectural design on garages, but while still recognizing that they are garages and they have a little bit of a different need design-wise. And then the last here, the purpose of the last here is to allow situations where people would like for family or others that they may be taking care of to be able to be in attached ADUs in their homes where they can get to them internally, which is not currently allowed by code. So Eric and I can answer any questions on these.
I guess I have one question about the ADU issue. How did this arise? Was it because someone wanted to have an internal, or there was no separation as required, and then it was noticed?
Yes, it arose because we had, Eric, you can go ahead and speak to it.
Sure, yeah, so we did. We had a few requests and even permits that kind of came about. One of those was actually related to the zoning commitment that was discussed at the beginning of the meeting here. Several situations where people wanted to have relatives living within their house while still having some separation and independence and have the accessory dwelling unit within the building, but being able to, have that access internally for when they wanted to, have that freedom of movement in the house, but still give them the ability to have their own space.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, so any questions about these changes from the commissioners? Now, do we need to take public comment on these as well?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I have maybe one other comment. I should have probably started with one comment is I really appreciate the process that you're undertaking to keep up with the changes, and I really think it is important that we bring any proposed technical changes or and these are important, significant changes, I think, with helping us achieve what we want in the comprehensive plan and the UDO as our guide for that work. So I appreciate bringing these forward on a regular basis. This is what the UDO is supposed to do. It is supposed to be a living document. So thank you, staff, for making this a regular part of our process. So with that, as preamble, are there any other questions from Commissioners Burrell or Cockrum to
None here, yeah.
Okay. All right, any questions from people in the room? Okay, I'll just comment again. I mean, I think the reducing the floor pets or making them a little bit more in scale is very appropriate. And I think the idea of trying to use that as a little more leverage, and particularly in association with the affordable housing incentive or the sustainable housing incentive, is a really important change. So glad to see that.
I do have one quick question in just trying to understand all of it. So what was the process by which the Plan Commission decided to make this change? I understand that it's a living, breathing document, but like what brought this about particularly? And it makes sense to me. I'm just curious the process, given that we just looked at this. It feels like recently, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was a lot longer ago. I feel like it was yesterday. So now I'm rethinking my question altogether. But what brought you to this point to make a recommendation such as this?
Anyone in particular? Or just
The ones with regard to
The
basically,
building
if you do either sustainable or affordable, you get 5,000 reduced down, but if you do both, then you get the 10.
Sure. I think it's been working with the code, the incentives as they are now. They were new, and so we wanted to try them out and see what we were getting. We are largely getting use of sustainable development incentives. It is becoming apparent that they could be stronger, and or that if we want to incentivize the affordable housing incentives, we needed to change the balance a little bit. We basically have been analyzing the projects that have come through, those that have come through by right, those that have used incentives, and then tried to tweak the building floor plate, which is kind of our biggest, I would say the thing that could be most impactful, to not only having design that people say that they want more, which is smaller, but if we are getting designs that are larger, making sure that those that are also contributing to other needs in the community, such as the affordable housing and sustainable needs. So trying to find that balance of how to still allow, of course, development to be able to make sense and be built in a sensitive way, but making the incentives more useful to the developer as well.
So it's based on how you've seen it, the UDO
Play out so
applied with
far.
actual
Yep.
cases, as opposed to you're having a change of heart.
Right. So it was a little hard at the beginning, to kind of pick the size. We picked sizes based on, buildings that we knew and development that we'd seen. But now that we've seen how those incentives are being used, we think that this will kind of get us more towards some of the goals that were initially part of the discussions.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And I do value that you are taking time, you and staff, to evaluate the UDO, because that's really important to the community, that it is something that makes sense. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question on that? Just in terms of, a ton of appreciation, just being newer to this, but all the work that went into the UDO period. But in terms of like quantifying, when you're saying this is, what's working, what's not, and the dialogue you're continuing for developers, you're trying to level up, in terms of leveling things out, is there a way like we could get a regular, very condensed report on how that's going? Because I think it's a great idea.
Sure. Yeah, so one very basic, easy thing that I would say is just from kind of like a layman's, looking to see that the petitions that have come here and those that have used incentives and those that haven't, what they've been able to build or what they've been able to build with the incentives that they've used. And, based on the discussions that were had at these meetings and the council meetings when the incentives were initially put in, are those the size or types or location of development that we thought we would be kind of promoting with the incentives? And so that's kind of the discussion we have internally as something comes through. But yeah, we can give you kind of a synopsis of those things that have been done and what they've used.
Yeah, just in terms of like the affordability factor, like seeing whatever percentage increase gains we could make on that in the next X amount of time, that'd be, really good information.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other commissioner comments, questions on this? All right, any public comment on ZO 1122? Anything Zoom? Okay, all right. No public comment on this one, so I think our move here is a motion to approve the ZO 1122 UDO Chapter 3.
It's a motion to recommend approval.
Recommend approval.
This will go
Thank
to
you.
council.
Yep, thank you.
I'll motion to recommend approval of ZO-11-22 to council.
I guess these will go to council.
We're all just looking.
Yep,
Just recommend approval to council. That's
Yep.
as well.
Okay.
That's
Great.
perfect. Thank you.
Great. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second, so we're ready for a vote on this one for ZO 1122.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
and Ballard.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Unanimous approval. All right. The next one, ZO 1222, UDO Chapter 4, Development Standards and Incentives Amendments.
Great, thank you. So this petition, there are more amendments. There are 21 amendments listed for Chapter 4. Again, this is just Chapter 4, so amendment for details related to design requirements for all of the uses that are discussed in Chapter 3. There are quite a few, or they vary greatly, I guess I said in the memo. So I will give you a brief rundown and then also project onto the screen the pages of the table, which again were and are in the packet. The amendments do a number of things. The first one you can see here is an amendment to the impervious surface coverage and landscape area requirements in a portion of the hospital redevelopment site. So in the portion that's east of Rogers, that has been known as Phase 1 East, you've seen it, excuse me, that's not exactly right. Sorry, it's bounded here, it's described, and I don't have my glasses. I lost them, I think, but let's see. North of First Street, south of 2nd, east of Maple, and west of Morton. So those lots that are within there that are zoned MM, we are proposing to change the impervious surface coverage to 85%. And so we're proposing to do that by amending a table in Chapter 4 and then a table in Chapter 2, which we'll get to with the final text, with the final ordinance. This basically syncs the UDO with the Bloomington Hospital Site Reuse Master Plan, which was finished last January for lots in this area that are available for redevelopment. They were intended to be in the plan, they were intended to be built in more of an urban way, similar to those in the downtown zoning districts with more impervious surface coverage allowed. So we're kind of trying to sync that to the plan. And then doing a little bit of cleanup. We tried to do all of the cleanup in the last ordinance we'll see today, but it got kind of sprinkled in here as well. Making some references for parking that exist in other districts, in other parts of the chapter, making those clearer by adding them to a couple of existing tables in the code as well. The other one related to impervious surface coverage is changing the impervious surface coverage in the showers technology area from 75-25, which we just discussed today, to 85-15. That again is in line to reflect the plan that was done, the master plan that was done for that area. The Certified Technology Park Plan envisioned more, again, of a kind of downtown more coverage development pattern, and so we're trying to reflect that now in the UDO, where the standards currently now are a little bit suburban with larger setbacks and larger impervious surface coverage. A number of small corrections are shown. We're adding solar energy ready requirements, clarifying a couple of things where we're not changing the requirement, but just clarifying them, such as drive aisle widths, street stub connection expectations and subdivisions, adding or cleaning up the code a little bit by deleting redundancy. And a big one is adding architectural standards for multifamily development. That's something that was kind of missing for that use. And so adding in similar architectural standards that we have for our mixed use buildings will now apply to our multifamily buildings, which we think is helpful. We worked with the urban forester to revise the street tree list so that could be more modern and updated. You will see that again in the future. We will continue to work with her. But for now, getting an updated list of those trees that we through her as the representative, but we as the city would like to see more or less of allowed across town. And I think the other one of interest is adding the option for small projecting signs for businesses in multi-tenant centers. We don't currently allow that. We do get quite a bit of interest. I don't know if it's kind of like a modern / throwback thing where people are wanting to have a small sign projecting off with a little bit about their business. So adding that in so that's allowed because it is not currently. So those are, I would say, the gist of the changes that we're making, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have something specific that I've missed.
Great, thank you. All right, so questions from commissioners in the room here? Any to my right? Okay, any?
Actually, I think I'm abstaining from this, Mr. Rooker, right? Because it's the one, the very first one on south of 2nd Street, north of 1st Street. It's that same parcel that I abstained from last time.
It would be up to discretion, Commissioner St. John, but it is the same area we've talked about.
It's the same area. This rule in particular is for properties zoned MM, mixed-use
Right.
medium scale, and I believe the property that you were discussing is zoned mixed-use neighborhood.
I understand.
So this rule wouldn't apply specifically, but it is totally up to you if you would like to abstain.
Okay, so you're saying it's different from when I abstained last time the petition came before? Or does it feel like the same?
I think it's up to you, because this is just like, right, changing the rules for the surrounding lots. That was more of like a specific touching that property situation. I don't think it's clear one way or the other if you should.
We can talk about this a little bit offline if you want separately, Commissioner St. John, but we talked a little bit about the particular parcel that was implicated
Yeah.
previously. Again, we have 6 members here, 5 votes are required for an affirmative vote. It's up to you if you want to abstain or if
Okay,
you have a
I might just abstain for just being overabundance of care.
Okay. All right, I do have a question. One, I like the projecting signs, and whether that's a throwback or whatever, I think it's really cool to have that as an option. Certainly favor signage when it's right up against your building. And then the other thing that I think is really interesting is the solar ready. How did that come about? What's the purpose or origin of that new development?
Oh, geez. I think, Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's in I'm not going to say the right thing, the SAP, what's it called? Commissioner Seaboard, economic development. It's in, I'm just not going to say the right thing. So our sustainability plan that we did as a city, and for some reason the name, only the acronym is staying with me, was led by Economic and Sustainable Development. I believe that it suggested that we codify solar-ready rules. And so, so Director Robinson did some research and proposed the regulations that you see here. Sustainable Action Plan.
Okay. All right, Eric, do you have a comment on this?
No, I don't. I was just going to fill in for Jackie, but she was doing a great job. So yeah, the Sustainable Action Plan encouraged solar readiness, and so that was something that we incorporated to help promote that.
Excellent. I'm very glad to see it make its way in here. All right. Anything from Commissioner Cockrum or Burrell?
Yeah, none here.
Okay.
Me.
All right. Okay.
Oh, Flavia nodded no as well. I forget
Okay.
you can't see them. I
All right,
apologize.
so now, again, public comment. We'll request any public comment on ZO 1222, Chapter 4. Anything?
There's no movement on Zoom.
No movement, all right. Okay, no movement in the room either. Okay, all right, well, we can, if we're ready for a motion on this one, for Chapter 4 changes. Again, it's a motion to recommend approval to council.
I move a positive recommendation to council for ZO 12-22.
Excellent, I'll second that one. And we can move to a vote. We do have one commissioner who's abstaining.
Okay.
Burrell?
Yes.
Cockrum?
Yes.
Ballard?
Yes.
Kinsey?
Yes.
Seaboard?
Yes.
St. John? Oh, she abstained. Yep.
Just point of order, you can still call her name and then she can.
Yeah, she can say that. Yeah.
affirmatively
Abstain.
abstain.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have 5 positive votes and then an abstention, so that one still is approved because 5 is all we need. Okay, all right, great. Okay, so now moving on to ZO 13-22, UDO Chapter 5 Subdivision Standards, and Chapter 6 Administration and Procedures, and Chapter 7 Definitions and Amendments. These are a series of technical corrections and text
Great,
amendments.
thank you. So for these 3 chapters, we have, I believe, 13 amendments. Just a second. Okay, the first, which is an important one, when we rewrote the code in 2019-2020, the environmental feature protection related to creating easements around environmentally sensitive areas is only in the subdivision section, not applying to other development that doesn't require subdivision. So we are adding in a caveat that those standards apply if you have environmental constraints on your property, even if you're only doing a site plan, for example. Adding the engineering department into the process for city light approval. Once we split, we tried to go through and make sure that items that were seen by engineering staff previously as planning and transportation staff are now routed to them officially if need be. We have changed our process for Development Review Committee, which is an internal meeting that we have before someone files a petition. Previously, we just suggested that the petitioners attend or a petitioner representative. We're now requiring that and trying to go to a more direct line of communication with each department that attends with the petitioner to try to answer as many issues at that meeting as possible. So that's been working out well, so we're going to go ahead and codify that and require that they attend those meetings. We are also proposing to sync our public notice requirements with those of the state. The way that our notice requirements are written in our rules of procedure, which appear in the administrative manual, are that for most of our hearings, including Plan Commission, we have to send mailed note, the petitioner has to send mailed notice to interested parties 21 days in advance of the hearing, and then 10 days in advance of the hearing, they need to place an ad in the paper, and that is done through, we do that for them. They pay and we do the administrative portion. However, when we adopted the new UDO, that was not transcribed properly into the new UDO, and it all needs to be done at 21 days now for almost all of our meetings. So that is problematic to have to send notice to the paper 3 days, 3 days before it has to go into the paper, and then it's in the paper 3 weeks before the hearing starts. So basically, when you're filing, we only have a few days to turn around and then you're appearing in the paper. It's gotten confusing. We are following the rules, but we would like to sync those rules with the state code, which requires 10 days for everything. So that will be easier for us, easier administrative, easier as well for petitioners who work in other communities and know the state code requirement. And also, if something is going to appear, then 10 days out, we are usually pretty sure that we know what is appearing. And so it is also easier for the public to kind of be ensured of what's going to be appearing at the upcoming hearings. So asking to sync that. We did, probably the biggest one in this section is modifying and syncing the triggers for both minor and major site plans. So you can see those more detailed in the red line, but basically increasing the standards slightly for the bottom threshold of a minor subdivision. Again, this is similar to Commissioner St. John's question before. These changes are proposed from working with the site plans, and you've even seen here probably a few that we've brought forward that seemed awfully small to be here. based on what we've seen in the past. So trying to kind of, I guess the right term, the right sizing those thresholds so that the UDO intention of trying to make it easier to go through the process and know the expectations is just clearer. And then writing it in such a way also that it's clear, that it lists what the requirements are if you're doing a minor subdivision. And then there are a few specific for major, and otherwise it just says, if you're bigger than the minors, then you come to major. Instead of trying to, they were all paired and it was just very confusing. So clearing up that language, I think will be helpful for people going forward. Increasing the triggers for grading permits. Right now, 1,000 square feet of earth disturbance requires a grading permit. We are increasing that to about 2,500 square feet. Again, working with the code, it's been 1,000 for a long time, but that brings in a lot of disturbance that potentially doesn't need to be analyzed at the level that we do for a grading permit. 1,000 square feet, for example, is a number of CBU projects or engineering projects, even internal things, as well as people who are just trying to update portions of their commercial lots. Really gets them in kind of a process that maybe is in place for larger problems, for larger sites. So we are increasing that to 2,500 square feet, as well as excluding some projects if you are literally only working on one building and not doing site improvements. We've had a couple of those lately where then there's just really nothing to review because they're not doing actual disturbance outside of the footprint of their foundation. So changing those triggers, and then just a couple more clarifications. As I mentioned, those kind of snuck into these as well as the first, as well as ZO10, and allowing minor modifications to be done with certificates of zoning compliance. You may recall the minor modification discussions that we had when that was put in, and it always seemed the intent of the code, and then when it was discussed in public hearings, that could be done for building permits, but it isn't written in that way, so we can't. We realized when we were going to do one that that's not what it says. So we are adding certificates of zoning compliance so that those small changes can be done at a staff level for those permits as well. And I think that's all. I can answer any questions.
All right, are you sure that's all? Is there a
Oh, is it
page-
not all?
I think there's a page 2. You
hold
tell
on.
me, but,
I'm so sorry. Hold on.
I mean, that's not enough, but.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Let's see. Oh, okay, so more clarifications. I didn't flip over my memo, apparently. Okay, so more clarifications, including that we have a requirement now where in some situations, if you're on a lawful nonconforming site that has excess parking, in your setbacks, you can be asked to remove it to get closer to compliance if you're redeveloping a site. We've run into a few situations where it's not clear whether or not it's parking, it's just asphalt. So we're clarifying that any asphalt that you have on site, if it's in a parking setback, if you're over your total number of allowed spaces as well as total impervious surface, that we can ask you to remove that when you do redevelopment. We included a new definition for ground cover. We didn't have one before, though we reference it in the code, so that's important to define. And then for front setback, we are clarifying that for one particular type of road, neighborhood residential, that front setback for a building will be measured from the existing right-of-way as opposed to the thoroughfare plan proposed right-of-way. It's very important to use proposed right-of-way so that we're not allowing buildings in what the city may want to be a road or a sidewalk in the future. However, the neighborhood residential roads are typically those that aren't envisioned for much expansion, and the transportation plan specifically calls out in the language of the plan that those should be measured from the right-of-way, so we're kind of changing that so it can match. We are putting a bottom threshold on the student housing developments with 3 bedrooms. So if you meet our definition of student housing because more than 33% of your units have 3 beds, we are putting a bottom threshold of 10 total units in your development. That isn't very many, but we are capturing right now, or people we have talked to, basically if you have, for example, if you're doing a development with 3 bedrooms and you can't meet the definition of triplex for a reason or another, you become student housing because you are doing 3 units with 3 beds each, so you're 100% 3 beds, and you get kicked into this, and that wasn't really the purpose. So adding a bottom threshold there, changing our abandonment timeline from 6 months to 12 months, and the last is cleaning up some of our language in our change of use definition. And that is actually the end. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. All right, so do we have any questions from commissioners in the room on these proposed changes and additions? Anything? There's a lot
No
here.
question.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I'm just glad we are addressing the 3-bedroom threshold so we can promote smaller developments with 3-bedroom.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's needed clarity. Excellent. Yeah, it looks good. You know, I did have a question about the requirement about the petitioner or petitioner's representative requiring to attend the DRC meeting. Is that at all a hardship for the petitioner or their representative? I mean, is that often
We almost always have attendance by a petitioner's representative, at least, I would say. So I don't think so. We haven't found that to be thus far. We've been encouraging them, at least for the last few months, to do that, and we haven't had any pushback from that. It's a pretty casual daytime meeting. Typically, you know, some of the things that are required to go to the meeting are like professionally drawn plans or architectural plans. So that professional is usually already engaged, and they often come anyway, so we haven't had any pushback thus far.
Good. I mean, it seems like a good thing. You know, when you're talking about the Development Review Committee, it seems like it's beneficial to have the petitioner or the petitioner's representative in there.
Yeah, and I think that's
okay.
pretty standard in other communities
Yeah.
as well.
Okay, great, good. Okay, well, if we're okay with this, we can recommend approval for these changes in Chapter 5, 6, and 7, CO 1322 to the council. Anybody want a motion?
This might seem silly, but do we need a public comment?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, I'm forgetting the public again. All right. Did you want to say something? Yeah. All right. Oh, good. We have a member of the public. Yes. Yes, and if you want to state your name.
Thank you, Commissioners. Not so much a member of the public, but with City Staff, John Zodi, the Director of Housing and Neighborhood Development. I just want to say that I appreciate the staff's changes for the DRC process, and I also appreciate the petitioners being willing to come. This is often and has become an opportunity for us to talk to the petitioner about affordability in their projects, so we're earlier in the process there, so we've appreciated that opportunity over the last couple months, and so it sounds like you're supportive of this, but just want to reiterate that that's another opportunity to talk about the development of affordable housing here in Bloomington. So,
Thank you for
Thanks.
clarifying. I'm glad to hear that. I was hopeful that that was the rationale for that change. I think it's a really good part of the process. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Any other public comment that I didn't mean to ignore? All right. Okay. So now we might be ready for some motion. Yeah?
I guess I will make a motion to make a favorable recommendation to City Council for ZO 13-22.
Great. Thank you.
I second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrell. All right. Okay, we can go to a vote for this one.
St. John,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Seabour,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes,
Cochran?
Yes.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so this passes on to council with another favorable recommendation. Okay, so now we have our last item to consider, ZO 10-22, the agenda item we moved to the end, the UDO technical text amendments.
Great, thank you. So this is technical amendments from the entirety of the code. There are 22 amendments, so I will briefly go through them. They range from, you can see the first few are either the wrong terminology being used, so correcting that, or a missing word. We capture the proposed change that was done in the Chapter 4 ordinance here as a cross-reference in Table 2-11 that we spoke about earlier for the areas in the hospital legacy site. And then again, syncing some code references to existing regulations in Chapter 4. And the maximum impervious surface coverage that was discussed, again, with the previous code. With the previous ordinance. So the way that the ordinance works, some things appear more than once. So they appear in the tables that discuss dimensions for all districts, and then they also appear in Chapter 2 where the actual specific zoning district is discussed. So this is just kind of joining those cross-references, some that we've already discussed tonight, and others that needed to be linked. Again, with the 85-15% surface coverage to landscape area in the Showers Technology Park. And then just below that, allowing metal to be primary material in the Showers Technology Park, syncing with a plan for the downtown from a number of years ago. So then we have a couple of code reference fixes, clarifying, you've already seen this in Chapter 4, but this ordinance seeks to clarify for the different zoning districts related to maximum building floor plate that it's per building. So right now it says per lot. Was not the intent. So we are just making sure to clarify that it is actually per building. Removing some old terminology, including the terminology for homeless shelter, updating our language related to accessible ramps or people with disabilities or experiencing homelessness. So changing those types of languages to more modern, appropriate terminology. And then again, syncing some more code references from Chapter 4. And making sure that those things that need to be routed through engineering are being routed through engineering, such as plants possibly being, or trees possibly being planted within a vision triangle, wanting to make sure that engineering is able to weigh in on that. Secondary plats, you may recall, can now be reviewed at staff level if that's designated during the primary plat time. That wasn't reflected in the table. That shows who can review what petitions, so making sure that change is reflected there. And again, updating some more language. We also changed, I believe in the last update, that home occupations could be done in approved residential accessory structures. That appears in the use-specific standards, but it didn't appear in the definition, so we're adding that into the definition so that that's clear, and I believe the last one is just deleting an excess word. So these are less impactful than some of the other ones we've discussed tonight. However, Commissioner St. John, it does reference those same standards, so just to be clear on that, if you're wanting to abstain from that entirely, it is part of this as well.
Okay. Can I comment on that?
Yes.
So it looks like, and just so I understand, because I saw that too, this is just syncing up what the Plan Commission just approved
Recommended
as
approval,
recommendation.
correct.
So it seems like since it's recommended by the Plan Commission, then this would just be syncing up technical language around that, so I don't think I have to abstain
Okay,
from
perfect.
that.
Just wanted to make sure you knew.
If I'm wrong, tell me, but, yep, okay.
Yeah, so now I understand why you wanted or needed to do this one last, because it was dependent on the approval of the prior changes. Okay, so comments from commissioners. One, I'll just say, I really appreciate the person-centered language too, to update that language, I think is not only timely and appropriate, but it's really sensitive to more inclusive language, so thank you for making those corrections. I do think there might be one, check the spelling, this is so trivial, of opioid. I think there might be an extra E in there where it's not needed, so.
Is that in the red line or the table?
It's in the, it's not, I didn't look in the red line.
Okay, perfect. I'll
It's in
check
the
the table.
table, but you might
Thank
just
you.
want to double check to
No
make sure
problem.
that it's spelled correctly. Yeah, so nice work on the language, though. I really appreciate that. Any other comments? Yes, one comment? Yep.
It also seems like potentially a typo in the table where it says homeless shelter in quotes, and it says removing old item on the right, but then it doesn't say what you're replacing it with. It just says removing old item again. Did you want to share what that would be?
Well, okay, so good question. It is listed in the definition for another definition. So it's just in one place where we're removing it, it is listed in the use-specific standards for sexually oriented businesses that they have to be separated from certain types of uses, and one of them is homeless shelter. So we just struck that.
Okay.
Because one of the things we did with the code update was try to kind of group uses, and the group that it's grouped under now is maybe too broad for the SOB, the way those work.
Okay. So you're striking it as
Yeah,
opposed to
we're striking
replacing it?
it.
Okay,
Thank you.
I misunderstood what you
No,
said
that's fine.
earlier. Thank you.
All right. Anything? Commissioner Cockrum, do you have a comment?
No, none here. Thank you, though.
I appreciate the change in location that we're getting from your view here. Yeah, looks very lovely. Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Burrell, anything from you? You're okay? All right, okay.
Yes, I'm okay.
All right, good. All right, and anybody else? We can go to public comment if there are any public comments on ZO 10-22. It's the kind of final syncing and textual corrections.
No movement on Zoom.
Okay, all right, okay. Maybe we're ready for a motion on this one to make a favorable recommendation? Anybody want a motion?
I'll make a motion to make a favorable recommendation to the council for ZO-10-22.
Yep, okay, great. I'll second it. And I think we're ready for a roll call. Yes.
Seaboard,
Yes.
Cockrum,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
St. John.
Yes.
All right, so that's the end of our UDO updates and revisions. Thank you, staff, again, for bringing that forward. We really appreciate your conscientiousness with making these updates and for continuing to work with the developers and the public about this issue. So thanks very much for that. Okay, we are through our agenda. Our next meeting is April 11th. So join us and we'll continue the hybrid format. That's the... As far as we know, yes. Okay, all right. Thanks, everybody, for being there. Thank you. Thank you, commissioners who were online. That's excellent. Thank you. Okay, all right. Have a good night, everybody.